Hi, good evening. Serious business that makes an author go in front of the camera. I am here tonight recording this, but also live if anyone wants to drop in, ask questions, to talk about what's happened in light of the Atlantic article, the one that demonstrated just how much of your content as authors Meta has got its hands on and where it came from. I'm going to share a presentation with you guys, but I promise I'm not going to talk for very long. This should take about 15 minutes tops. But if you do have questions, pop them in the Q&A. And if you aren't able to see this live and you're watching it on re-record, you can find me on Blue Sky as Sarai Bai. I'll put a link in the show notes below. Or you can email me. You can see my email address on the slides as info@emmaburn.net. So my background is as an AI researcher for about 15 years, and then more recently a popular science author. I am a member of the Society of Authors, but I'm not doing this on behalf of the Society of Authors or with any input from the Society of Authors. You'll see me mention them a lot tonight, but they are not responsible for any of this content. Just want to say that if there are any problems with this, come at me. Again, website is up there at the top of the slide. So, you've been pirated. What now? If you found yourself on that list of books that have been taken by Meta, let me explain to you what's going on with those books, what's happened to them now Meta have got their hands on them. So what is AI? And I can say as someone who has a PhD and 15 years of postdoc in both AI, genetics and neuroscience, AI is not particularly intelligent. It used to be, when I used to teach it, I would say it's the name we give to things we haven't taught computers how to do yet. But it seems really sticky, this label of AI applied to a particular kind of machine learning. It's good at learning and generating patterns. So let me give you some quick examples. This was one of the earliest uses of neural networks, and you can sort of tell from the fashions here, which all look perfectly up to date to me, but apparently are a little bit passé now. But I think these are the sorts of things I was wearing in about 2002. What happens is you provide a machine learning system with lots and lots of inputs of particular categories. In this case, trousers, everything from your skinny jeggings through to your wide mom jeans. Lots of different examples of the category of sweater, different examples of the category of dress. And as you can see, they're all different, but we as humans have absolutely no problem going, yeah, that's a shoe, that's a trainer. Sorry, sneakers, obviously American example. That's a bag, those are boots. So what you do is you keep throwing these examples at the computer, and in this example, what the computer is doing is looking at essentially the image information, the values for each of the pixels, how light or dark each pixel is. That is literally all the information it has. There's no sort of further description, no words that are given. Even if there are words on the tops, they're not read by the computer in any way. And just those, how light or dark each pixel is input as many different values. So here in the example, there are 5 inputs, but in reality, many more. And the computer does some fun statistical processing and tries to attach one of the 9, 10 labels that we've got here for these categories. And in supervised learning, what happens is every time it applies a label, it's been told by the trainer whether or not that label is correct. So over time, these weights that are in the middle, the hidden layers, the dashed boxes, those change. Those are allowed to be changed by the machine until it gets a transformation that turns all of those numbers that come from the pictures into the word shirt or the word sweater or the word trousers. And what's happened over the 2-3 decades that we've been able to do this kind of machine learning is that the amount of data we've got is far more vast. The amount of data that machines can handle is far more vast, and the amount of compute, the amount of calculations that computers can do every millisecond has gone up vastly. So what started as quite small neural networks, so for example, this was one of the first ones, was recognizing handwritten numbers and is used in recognizing postcodes that are written on envelopes in order to provide automated tracking or targeting, sending of your letters to the right part of the post office. This was quite a groundbreaking thing at the time, but we're doing things with far greater amounts of data now. And instead of putting out one label, what happens with generative pre-trained transformer networks is they will put out a string of text or a whole image that is essentially, when you think about it, you know, it's a 600 pixel by 600 pixel image. That's I should know this, 3,600 pixels, each with a different value for the R, the G, the red, the green, the blue, its intensity. When it's creating images, it knows nothing of the character of the categories that it's creating. It's literally just putting out color and intensity data. And it looks to us like pictures because it's kind of a statistical mashup of other pictures it's been shown before. It does the same with text, and it's purely probabilistic. I mean, the probabilities are very complex, but for example, if you type into something like ChatGPT the word "the," it's got very little idea what's likely to come next. So this slide shows your input on the left-hand side, the ChatGPT at that point, or Meta's AI, which I think is called Llama, is trying to decide what word might come next. And it knows that it's not very likely to be the repeated again. That's why we've got this very thin line between the and the. But the quick, yeah, there's probably quite a thick line between the and adjectives, or here in this case, the quick. The noun, brown, another adjective, brown. The noun, fox. The jumps, the doesn't usually get followed by a verb, so that's got a very thin line. The over, doesn't make much grammatical sense, so that's got a very thin line. The lazy, we're back in the realm of adjectives again. That could come after the word the very easily. And the dog, again, that's probably a pretty high probability that is a word that could occur after the. So basically, if you had to gamble on which of those words might occur after the word the, and you weren't familiar with this particular string of input that's used for testing typing speed, you would guess the adjectives and the nouns more than you would guess verbs, adverbs, or the word the again. So ChatGPT, as you give it more parts of the string, because it's seen the example, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog many, many times over, the more of that string you give it, the more certain it is what is going to come next. So once you've given it an adjective, it knows you're probably likely to have a noun next, particularly if you've already had the other adjectives in the set. By the time you got to lazy, it knows that the next word that you're likely to want to generate is dog. Now, if you don't mind boiling the oceans a bit, and I'm not really kidding here, every time you use ChatGPT, for example, it takes about the size of a 500ml bottle of mineral water to cool it down. But if you don't mind doing that, try putting in the quick brown fox and see what it does. You should find that it auto completes the phrase. Whereas if you say, tell me about the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, it will tell you what it's learned from the internet about why that phrase is important. So generated text looks really impressive, but it's just a bunch of statistics. It's just basically rolling the dice and go, what words would be most likely to come next? And quite often it's pretty suspect. So here's an example that was on Google's AI for a while. John Backflip is credited with being the first person to perform a backflip, which he did in 1316. This is now gone. They did find out that people had been sharing this. But all generative AI systems can be polluted by memes. So basically, the Google AI that is behind this, Gemini, it was trained on, among other things, Reddit, and it doesn't understand the difference between information that is given in earnest and information that is given satirically, sarcastically, or as an attempt to mislead. Answers could look reasonable at first glance, and if you've used ChatGPT or other forms of AI to play around with, to see if they can write things that are interesting just out of morbid curiosity, or even because you hope it might be helpful, you've probably noticed that, yeah, it can generate decent text. So this is a ChatGPT example. So the doctor yelled at the nurse because she was late. Who was late? The answer is the doctor yelled at the nurse because she was late. It's the nurse who was late. Now, so far, so reasonable. We yell at people when they're late. I mean, I don't. I'm usually apologetic. I'm so sorry. I probably didn't tell you the right time. And it's all right. It's fine. But that's because I'm British. But then we realize if we dig a bit deeper, that gender is actually a stronger prediction than that logic, that the person who is late apologizes and the person who has been kept waiting is likely to be angry. So in the example, the nurse yelled at the doctor because she was late. Who was late? In the sentence, the nurse yelled at the doctor because she was late. It's the nurse who was late, because this OpenAI system has seen a lot of examples of nurse with the female pronoun and doctor with the male pronoun. And so it decides that the person who is late is the she is most likely to be the nurse, therefore the nurse is late. So clearly it doesn't understand anything about social conventions and lateness and what that might mean. It just knows that she is nurse and he is doctor. So our biases are completely embedded in the model. The doctor yelled at the nurse because he was late. Again, it's clearly, to me, the male nurse is late. But according to ChatGPT, it's the doctor that's late because it's a male pronoun. So whatever you're doing with it, I'm not going to say stop, but I'm going to say there's an environmental cost to it, and you cannot guarantee that this is good quality. Now, given that you're a bunch of authors, I might be preaching to the choir here. But yeah, if you have been playing around with it, have a think about what biases are showing up in the writing it produces and whether those are biases that you personally would want to promote. It's also very good at just making stuff up. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but someone went through, I think, 10,000 hours of medical records that have been dictated. This was purely AI that was meant to be turning text into speech. And it was coming up with the most ridiculous things. Like, for example, saying that a boy who had been injured by putting his hand through a plate glass window by mistake, the voice, the text output from the speech to text engine added some completely spurious details about this boy having a knife, which, given that that is entered into his medical records, and given that that is the US, where you're dependent on making insurance claims to pay for your treatment, this could have serious impacts on both this boy's ability to get his treatment paid for and also potentially his criminal record, because your medical record has an evidentiary weight in the States. It's also making up whether or not people are Black or Caucasian. Now, this can make big differences in terms of how things are diagnosed. It's even making up names of medicine that I've checked with various medical friends, and hyperactivated antibiotics are not a thing. So hallucinations, this just making stuff up, is a very common problem. Now, if you're an author of fantasy, maybe that's what you want. But again, be sure that this is the stuff you would make up versus the stuff that people who are shitposting on Reddit or people who've got a political axe to grind are making up. This research was done by Hilke Schellmann and her team, and she has got a fantastic book, which I think is called The Algorithm. Definitely worth getting hold of. Again, I haven't got a link in there yet, but I'll drop a link. So what did The Atlantic discover? If you're here because of that article, that's thanks to the reporting from Alex Reisner, who got hold of internal information in terms of messages and memos inside of Meta. And the trainers of their AI model, called Llama, chose to pirate from a source called LibGen. Now, some of you may have heard of LibGen, some of you may not, but it is just a collection of pirated works. The Atlantic, for your own perusal and disappointment, allows you to search for your own name in this list of publications. I have 2 different copies of one book. I think possibly someone has pirated both the hardback and the paperback, so have fun with that. And also about 1/3 of the scientific papers I've ever written. you will probably find, if you are an author and you have been published, be that self-published, published in a journal, published by a good old-fashioned publishing house, you're probably on here. So what is LibGen? Well, LibGen is a database of pirated books, as I said. Their argument is that they make copyright works available to people who can't pay. Now, we have libraries for that, and I know libraries are under attack and that it's very difficult for them to maintain comprehensive holdings, but libraries are terrific. And here in the UK, American friends get absolutely blown away by this, but here in the UK, we get paid when you borrow from a library. We love this. In the States, you at least get royalties on the copy that is bought, but then people can borrow these books free of charge. But it also turns out that, thanks to some research by Torrent Freak, that the people who do torrent books tend to have a household income of between $60,000 per year and $99,000 per year. And I know that if you're authors watching this, that on average, your writing income is a tenth of that. But let's look at the comparison between not just the individuals who are torrenting these books, who are downloading these books. Look at the difference between the financial power of you, the author, and Meta, who have just scooped up this stolen material and used it wholesale. So each one of these pound signs is equivalent to £3,500. And this is the average income of an author in the UK in 2022. The two red pound signs are the £7,000 that on average authors earn, and that includes everyone from the J.K. Rowlings and Stephen Kings to the rest of us. We're going to look at that versus Meta's declared UK profits in 2022. So we're still there. You might still be able to see, depending on what device you're watching this in, two little tiny pound signs at the bottom. That's us versus Meta's declared profits. But bear in mind, their declared profits are based on a very small percentage of their revenue. So let's look at the comparison there. Oh, that's frozen a bit because it's very hard to compare the two. So this is one big 100 block large grid. We are two of these little pound signs here. This is my computer doesn't like making this comparison. This is the overall turnover of Meta, and you can see we are a tiny fraction of the number of pixels on the screen. So the ability for Meta to pay authors for their work is not in question. Sorry, I got that wrong. There we go. That's their profits. Here we go. This is their turnover, and we are down here. Tiny little dot. Yeah, they could probably afford to pay authors for their work if they really wanted to. So your work is being used to train a machine learning system very much like the one that I explained at the beginning. It looks at lots and lots of examples of books, and then people go, write me a book. And it goes, yeah, sure, I know what books look like. I've read thousands of the things because I downloaded them for free. Now, if that doesn't seem right to you, if that seems like a gross violation of your copyright, if that seems like a further erosion of the amount of money that authors are likely to be paid, which, given that in the UK between 2006 and 2022, the average author income went down from £17,000 a year to £7,000 a year, so from bad to unlivable, you might want to take some steps at this point. Contact your agent if you have one. If you are agented, they are your advocates, and they know that if you're not getting paid for work, there's 10 to 15% of that stuff that they're not getting paid for either. So they have a vested interest, as well as actually, hopefully, being on your side in this. And also, you're not going to be the only author that's been affected by them. So contact your agent. Contact your publisher. Now, one of the questions that came in is about, well, what do I do if my publisher is already sold out to the AI companies? I'll come to that in a second. Contact the ALLI, the Alliance for Independent Authors, if you are independently published. They are really great. I've met a few of their representatives at London Book Fairs past, and they are absolutely fearsome advocates for people who don't have the protection of a big publishing house. So solidarity and collective action here is your friend. Go get in touch with Ally. Write to your MP if you're in the UK. If you are outside the UK, whoever your local representative is, whatever your governmental system is, write to them and ensure that the laws of your country are fit for purpose. In the UK, we have a worrying situation that the government is so keen to encourage AI companies that it's seriously considering just giving away all of the rights for machine learning training that exist in UK copyright work. Write to your MP, make sure that they know the difference between the number of pixels on the screen that were red, your £7,000 a year or thereabouts, and the number of pixels on my screen that were blue, the revenue that Meta makes, and make sure that they realize that Meta can pay for this. And then finally, use the Authors Guild form letter to lodge a protest with Meta. I will have a couple of links in the description. One of those links is to that form letter. There should be some QR codes in a minute as well. What if my publisher has signed a deal with an AI company? Now, this was a question that came up through direct messaging. It's come to me on every platform that I'm on, actually, because this has happened, that publishers either deliberately, in a thoughtful way, in a way that has consulted with their authors, or just in a kind of hidebound, take it or leave it kind of way, have said that they're going to partner with AI companies. Now, you may not be against your work being used in this way if you are fairly recompensed. And I'm not going to say you can't do that. This is another right, like translation or audiobook or a game adaptation. What I am going to say is keep reminding yourself of the amount of money that the people using your work have got, and make sure you ask for some of it. So speak with your publisher, see what agreements they either have in place or plan to have in place, and either ask for the recompense that this right should deserve, and it's not nothing, or opt out. Also, recognise that what's happened, what The Atlantic has just revealed in its reporting, is not that. This is not Meta using works that they have licensed from publishers. This is Meta deliberately and with malice aforethought using work that they know to have been stolen from those publishers. So now might be a very good time to ask your publishing company if they're happy with their choices to work with these AI companies, because they might be reconsidering that. And if you're not happy with their answer, again, speak to your agent, the Society of Authors, the Authors Guild in the States. Make sure that your voice is heard, because they will claim up, down, and sideways that this is fair use. And also, we couldn't possibly afford to, it's just we've got to move fast and break things, and we're entrepreneurial and like we're just experimenting with things. We're taking huge risks here. We're entrepreneurial. Every time we sit down to write a book, we don't know whether or not it's going to sell. We don't know if another pandemic is coming that's going to absolutely tank our launch. We don't know whether or not we're going to hit the market just right at the right time and we sell tens of thousands of copies or 7. We're entrepreneurial. We're taking the risks, not them. They have very deep pockets, so don't buy that argument. And then the other argument is that this is fair use. This is just like if someone reads my book and is so inspired by it that they want to go out and write their own popular science book, it's just like that. No, it isn't. If you read my book and you're so inspired by it, you want to go out and write your own popular science book, that's fucking brilliant. I owe Mary Roach a massive debt of gratitude, and Katie Fox and Bill Bryson. But I wrote those books. There was what the patent law calls the sweat of one's brow and the non-trivial step. I have done something that required my effort to create a new piece of copyright. I didn't just go, I'm going to cut a page out of Mary Roach and a page out of Bill Bryson. I'm going to slap them together and put my name on it. And that is essentially what these systems are doing. It's just they're doing so many books at the same time, you can't see where the scissor marks are anymore. But it is all copy and paste. So, why is that not working? I've lost the QR codes I put in. I'm very sorry. All of the links are available at the bottom in the description. Again, email me if you've got any questions. Can't see there's some people on, but I can't see any questions in chat. So you've got about 15 seconds while I just say that I'm really glad that people are noticing that this is happening. I am really happy to properly explain what this stuff is doing and demystify what AI is. If you have a local authors group, or you have a book group, or anyone that I would literally talk to anyone by Zoom, I can't necessarily travel anywhere, explaining what is happening to your work so that you are better able to advocate for yourself. If you are self-published, you are as much at risk as anyone, particularly if you're using platforms like Kindle, where you don't necessarily have the greatest transparency over the terms of use, because platforms like Amazon will single-handedly, unilaterally change their terms of use, and you kind of have to take it or leave it. So again, joining up with an association that represents independent authors, making sure that you are active in that association is a really good idea. Joining Society of Authors, Authors Guild, wherever you are in the world, whatever you've got, because our jobs are very poorly recompensed. It is almost impossible to make a living purely as a writer. I don't know anyone that doesn't have some sort of second job or some other form of income that is supporting them, which means that writing becomes the privilege of the privileged. It becomes the privilege of the kind of people who, like me, can take on other work that is flexible, that is part-time, that can be done remotely, and then take an afternoon here and there to concentrate on my writing. All of those voices that are marginalized because they're having to work jobs that, are gig economy and they just have to be available whenever, or they are very manual and you have to be on site at a certain time, they're not going to be able to quit those jobs if writing income keeps falling. In fact, they're not going to be able to quit their jobs unless writing income actually goes back up again. It feels like pushing water uphill, but there is a collective damage that this is doing. Yes, they've stolen your work. Be pissed off about it. Write to your MP, write to Meta, write to LibGen. Push back on the bullshit that LibGen is there to look after people and say, hey, if you can't afford a book, that's fine, we've got your back. It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So that's not much in the way of a conclusion, unless I was to sum it up as, if you feel like you're right to be angry, then you are right to be angry, and there are things you can do. And get in touch with me if you want any more help. Thanks to those of you who've shown up live. Thanks to those of you who are watching after the event. This isn't the end of this. And I've no idea how long this will stay up, given how many times I've said bullshit. So enjoy it while it lasts. Take care and enjoy your evening. Good night.